Good morning, everybody. Cowboy, aka Nick, here with Veles, the dark raven of the deep state, and a lot of people's favorite guest on here. I know Veles actually single-handedly almost kept Rogue going with the jumper cables about once a week between the three of us for a good year. And it's always a pleasure to have you on, Veles. Looking forward to the show. Before we get started, look in the description. We have a link to a free algo from our paid sponsor, Algo Factory. I built it. I show you how to build it. I show you how to turn it into code using grok.ai, which is very easy. And I show you the tools that a lot of traders will use to connect their algorithm to their broker so they can trade while they're not sitting at the computer. So we're going to have our coffee ready. I got my coffee. I've got it blended with butter as I do. I know that's kind of like old now and not as cool as it used to be, but I do that. And I've got always I know V says have your notebook and pencil ready. What I have is actually a sticky pad. I have the yellow sticky pad, and I literally take notes during the show because this show is packed full of awesome information. Veles, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, my friend. And as always, my deep thanks for your kind thoughts at the opening and your note taking. As always, everyone, my thanks for Algo operating the AWACS while I'm down here on the ground for today's program. Just a heads up, no show for me next week because I'm traveling, but I'm not leaving the country. I'm only going to the coast to go make sure it's still there.
Now, just a quick interruption here. As General Miyagi always said, AWACS on, AWACS off.
Nice.
Let's have some fun.
And also to Night with Agenda's post in the YouTube chat where he was commenting about Palantir, and he said a very smart middleware application that has hooks in the real databases you need to worry about. That is an incredibly intuitive and accurate statement, folks, about a lot of things when it comes to software. This wasn't part of my prepared comments, but my thanks as always tonight. That is so true of so many things, folks. And to use my car analogy, if the car and the engine aren't high quality, then it doesn't matter how good the supercharger or the add-on component is. And that's a lot of these software tools out there that you're hearing about, even AI. Which we're going to get into today. The true takeaway is how solid is the foundation. The rest of that stuff is an add-on. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all the ships at sea and wherever you may be, and also to the ladies out in Japan whose husbands are flying jets all over. For just the normal public service announcement for anybody needing to reach out to me or my colleagues, you can reach me at this email address, 1917veles@gmail.com. And I've heard from a couple of you. So if you've got questions, thoughts, input, what have you, or if you want access to the Discord page, I can send you a link and we'll get you hooked up. Please also visit Gus Demos at perpetualassets.com to consider your additional financial options. And as Algo said at the opening here, algofactory.tech as well for his various offerings. So from a social media perspective, please remember more and more, the content on social media is going to be AI derived. So even if it is content with which you agree, whether it's an image or it is a text, always double check. It's up, it's down. When the ball falls, no one knows. AMD, the chip maker's CEO, announced on Wednesday she's all in on AI, and the stock soared 10% that day. Her public statement was, and I quote, "AI is the right gamble," unquote. If that wasn't enough, the same day Anthropic announced they were spending $50 billion on U.S. AI infrastructure with focus on Texas and New York data centers. That effort will be in partnership with a firm called Fluid Stack, who supplies large-scale graphics processors or GPU clusters to firms like Meta, Midjourney, and Mistral. Keep in mind, outside of the AI world right now, a lot of money is being dumped on anything and everything that's medical. The first data site is expected to go live in 2026. Anthropic is a rival of OpenAI. The latter has over 1.4 trillion, let me say that again, 1.4 trillion in build-outs with NVIDIA, Broadcom, and Oracle. So the money continues to flow. It's all ball bearings nowadays. I'm not a fan of Chevy Chase outside of Caddyshack, but I do love the line from Fletch, it's all ball bearings nowadays. How many times in any profession does someone appear stating everything that worked previously was wrong and they have something new? Along those lines, and to not oversimplify, let me give us a little hope based on previous content. Lieutenant Colonel Murray and E.M. Burlingame recently appeared on Tommy's podcast and recentered us all with the following. Whether we're discussing artificial intelligence or discussing the surveillance state, it comes down to thermodynamics. To oversimplify, various new technologies we keep hearing about will still run up against the challenges of thermodynamics. No one to date has come up with something more effective than the giant processor living in your head. Remember, the world's elites do not have the sheer numbers the rest of society has. They just have better design, deception, and influence. It's one of the reasons why we here at Rogue are here. Further, when we consider folks like Patrick Ryan, or the gentleman who's a lot like him I met out in California, and so many others like them who know how to interfere with the Matrix's base code, there are too many Ronin out there who can bring it all down if they wanted to. Not to mention those who have discovered it at a spiritual level. That said, hang in there, folks. British intelligence. British intelligence has ceased providing drug boat intelligence to the U.S. government until we stop blowing up drug boats. Yes, that's what I said. Who begs several...
I'm sorry.
This begs several questions. How did British intelligence get intel on drug shipments? And why were they gathering such intelligence? And they don't want us blowing up drug boats. They wouldn't be, because that's London Corporation money and assets who are sinking to murky depths. Oh, and by the way, as a percentage and per geopolitical futures, this is some important data, narcotics traffic into the United States as a percentage. The traffic that comes into the United States from the Pacific Ocean side is 74% of all drug imports, predominantly from Colombia and Ecuador. Venezuela is only 16% of total narcotics imports to the United States. Just some helpful data for consideration. Germany. Speaking of Europe, hot off the press this morning, we have two items concerning Germany. First up, the German Chancellor told President Zelensky of Ukraine, you're going to love this, to ensure young Ukrainian men stop coming into Germany and get them to come back to Ukraine. Yes, folks, the German Chancellor wants Ukrainians to return to Ukraine so they can die there. Second, my thanks to Softy Smith, posting on Discord this morning. In a stunning debut, the German government has resumed using the 1930s and 40s term fatherland to refer to Germany again. German government officials are using it in reference to their potential return of mandatory military service in the country. My take on that is, look, Germany, I just got back from your country and your kids are too busy clubbing and looking for work to bother with military service. THC, the rumors are true. A provision was added to the funding bill that passed this week to make it illegal to sell THC products like gummies and similar with more than 0.04% milligrams of THC. Yes, there is a wide range of THC levels in various cannabis products out there, but that's more of an FDA matter and should be managed by the FDA. For reference, many commercially offered gummies are 2 milligrams of THC. In the 1980s, we used to call something like 0.04% near beer. Ukraine. The normal disclaimer whenever I bring up the conflict in Ukraine. These are my fellow Slavic people killing each other, and there's no satisfaction by me in victories on either side. At the same time, this is not the first time in Slavic history we've had to contend with being manipulated by someone. The situation on the ground in Pokrovsk is dire, and it's only a matter of time before Russian forces take that city. Equally, a bad rendition of the final Hunger Games movies. I'm sure the whole area is landmined over every square inch of the place. This is not just another key city or fortification Ukraine has lost. If you review websites who display the disposition of military assets by both sides, this is like the Confederacy trying to hold Atlanta with one army against 3 Union armies. Equally, the rest of Ukraine has few forces left to protect other borders or strategic assets. Also this week, not only did the European Union find people with chunks of money trying to leave the country, but Ukraine's own investigators are digging into people close to Zelensky himself. Many have said it for some time, and now it appears to be happening. They're going to leverage Zelensky's expendability and either kill him or move him out of the country. Plus, a number of Zelensky's ministers have resigned in the past 48 hours. Who will replace Zelensky, only God knows. As a functioning political state, Ukraine is essentially done. The only thing keeping any semblance of a nation state are European countries providing support, money, and legitimacy. I do indeed pray this long human tragedy mercifully comes to an end. Groomers. There are more videos on Crazy Days and Nights on YouTube covering famous people grooming kids. You'll probably find several people profiled rather surprising. One moment. The Sun. Just a reminder, it's not your imagination. If you're feeling strangely agitated lately or brain fogged, we are electrochemical beings, to channel EM's program on Thursday. In Veles speak, you're a great big antenna, and the sun is kicking off a lot of energy right now. So much so that an underwater volcano off the coast of Oregon is becoming active again. Hang in there, Valley Girl, in case you need to get to higher ground. So if you're feeling that way during any of these solar events, go take a walk, make sure you have mineral supplements, make sure you're hydrating, get some electrolytes in your system, listen to some mood music, and help calm yourself down. This sounds familiar. Zero Hedge said Thursday it would take $5 trillion to fund the AI cycle, and the U.S. government is committed to $1 trillion of it. Then I started thinking, wait, there's something familiar about this. Then I remembered we've heard this before. Anyone recall the trillions they said governments globally would have to spend per the World Economic Forum and others on green energy and carbon neutral technologies? And then, of course, that sort of just went out the window. It's the same game, folks. It feels like they're just trying to find something to invest large sums of money when it comes to infrastructure. I'm equally wondering when we roll out the aliens to come up with something no one will argue about. Nuclear power. For those of you on the Discord channel and either my page or others, my thanks as always to Knight for keeping us informed with all things nuclear. I can't do justice to the amount of detail he's provided out there. I know I've said this before, but it's not just the same stale story from last week. Literally on almost a daily basis, he's been keeping us up to date on legislation that's been proposed or passed and various activities at a state level. Yet another massive dollar figure by a power company to build out capacity with newer technologies, including microreactors. Also, the various firms out there vying for a piece of that infrastructure to build. There are times one can wonder which part of the chicken and the egg scenario was envisioned by the elites first. Build the need for AI first, or build the grid while building AI? For now, AI is not enough to justify these builds. I wouldn't be surprised if we either had a national event or a new development who justified all this grid building. I mean, beyond the fact our grid is held together with kite string and hope, we still haven't hardened it at all. Said more succinctly, be done to the grid, and it's been needing to be done for more than 20 years. It looks like we may, air quotes, be finally getting around to it. Hey, V.
Hey, good morning, buddy.
Nancy Pelosi. Yes, Nancy's going to serve out her current term, and then that'll be it. Recall also on the day Joe Biden was inaugurated as president, the FBI released a multi-decade report on the Pelosi family. What was the summary? The whole family for generations has been up to their eyeballs in organized crime. And they were simultaneously informants for the FBI for years. Please don't pay any attention to her capacity to make money investing better than Warren Buffett while borrowing the brain of God. But wait, there's more. Nancy's daughter, Christine Pelosi, an activist and attorney, has said she's going to run for a California state Senate seat. For you fans of history, I'm not joking. This is exactly how Barack Obama's ascendancy began, with a state office and then a national office.
Wow.
Manipulation. Another way to manipulate the public on a large scale is as follows. You feed information to an activist or well-known public figure to include in their commentary. Let's say biblical references to rooting out the evil in one's midst. Then if that public speaker is seriously harmed or killed, people will re-review their prior statements and commentary. This repeats the message on a deeper level. When did such a thing occur? When Pastor Rob McCoy supposedly fed content to Charlie Kirk, who Kirk included in some of his speeches, and now the pastor is rising in prominence. I'll leave that right there.
Wow.
Take me out to the ballpark. In case you didn't read deeply into the topic, we've got a real pickle of an investigation going on with Major League Baseball. Never mind our prior rogue programs about all the irregularities in the Super Bowl. I'm not a sports person outside of soccer, so it was hard for me to internalize those who've been recently accused in major sports of being on the take. Yet I'm familiar with 9 Men Out and the fixing of the 1919 World Series and similar claims. Mike Moore at True Pundit has not only been very loud about that accusation and has also brought up several books and documentaries that have focused on the degree to which sports has been rigged. So let's ask a root cause level question. Why does this happen? Simply put, there's a lot of money in sports betting. Sports industry itself is a money machine compared to what it was in the 1970s. And whether organized crime or others, there's money to be made in fixing the outcomes of sporting events.
Absolutely.
You don't even need the coach to be involved. Just a few key players or a blackmailed quarterback or pitcher. Not sure many of you have also seen the news, a couple of high-profile people connected to baseball whose homes have recently burned down or similar misfortunes. If those investigations should continue, folks, I fear it'll be like the scene from the movie Casino when the mob bosses decide to kill anyone who knew about the skimming in Las Vegas. You seriously cannot let folks know whatever happened or get deposed in court. 764, not the area code. Last May, I noted Frank at Quite Frankly had a guest on named BX, who was an investigative writer. This person had been digging into the group known as 764, mentioned on that program how dangerous they are to children. Equally important, they're not the only one, unfortunately. There are others, and please keep an eye on what your kids are doing when they're online. On Tuesday the 11th, Daily Mail ran an article on the group who demonstrated more of a mainstream awareness of it and others like it. To date, the group has been implicated in 2 murders and numerous suicides. One of their symbols is a pentagram overlaid on top of the numbers 764 and a Middle Ages symbol for witchcraft, which is a sideways 8 with a double bar cross on top of it. Per the article, now the BBC podcast called Assume Nothing, Creation of a Teenage Satanist, can be added to the media coverage. Though, given the problems at the BBC and its years of defending Jimmy Savile, I'm not sure this makes up for it. As I noted on a prior rogue discussion, this group is being investigated by both the American FBI and Europol, law enforcement in Europe. Groups like this are highly decentralized and target kids through a variety of methods, often using a group approach to break young kids down emotionally when they're ready to strike. So please keep an eye on your families and your kids. I would also point out, I did reach out to Frank, and he said that he'll probably have BX on again because they're continuing to dig into that and other interesting topic matter. Job market awareness. There's a lot flying around about the job market, and we'll delve into this in more detail a little later on. Here are some takeaways. Yes, several large corporations in the IT space have been laying off large numbers of people. Yes, those layoffs, for those of us in those industries, bring back bad memories of 2001 and 2008. However, large IT firms laying people off when earnings and importantly margins are down is not new, especially with a forthcoming correction in the markets and capital expenditures and AI burning up lots of money. Are other industries laying people off? Yes. Are we witnessing corrections from fast food to transportation to IT to academia? Yes. What are some behind the scenes elements as well? For starters, we had a lot of people who, for lack of a better word, had to be hired due to DEI policies. To what degree are layoffs across several organizations a reflection of letting those people go? It's hard to say, but organizations are cleaning house, and a lot of people who were political hires don't produce. Another hidden detail for consideration is what's called ghost postings on job sites. I've seen them myself where the same role appears repeatedly but never seems to be filled. Where I've personally witnessed that has been in consulting and government contracting roles in particular. From my experience in those sectors, it's not uncommon. Organizations want to know who is available if they land a particular contract or a win, especially in government contracting. They can't hire somebody until they've got the contract. And then there's this murderous race over 30 to 45 days to try and fill a contract. Here's an important data point about ghosting from CNBC. The openings to hire ratio went from 1.8 postings for every job filled to 1.4 for every job filled in the last few years. It's been trending down since 2023. We also have to contend that the last month or so, the agencies responsible for tracking these things was shut down, so we don't have the data. Lastly, while workforces are continually asked to perform more with less, many firms have posted jobs to prove to overworked staff, don't worry, more people are coming. It's been proven in several situations the jobs were posted to try and alleviate frustration and not actually hire anybody. As someone who's seen this several times during the last 30 years, what usually occurs is we reach a breaking point. Then the first firms to begin hiring again cause a wave of hiring as organizations don't want to be left behind. The market. Just a reminder, our elite overlords tend to always execute their biggest plans or milestones and their goals according to astrology. Per Micah Dank and his work and the work of others, the stock market crashes, not large-scale adjustments, but crashes always occur in the sign of Libra, who to all of us is the month of October.
Yes.
We just survived October 2025, but does that mean October 2026 is the date when we will see the final correction? I would watch the financial markets closely next summer, and if October appears shaky, do what you feel you need to do. I can only point out a multitude of crashes in U.S. history occurred in October, and many of them under Republican administrations. What are some examples? 1907, 1929, 1987, 1989, 2002, and 2008. And of course, not to sound like the scene from Margin Call, where the chairman is sitting at the table rattling on to, what do you call it, Kevin Spacey's character, when he goes, 1987, boy, did I lose my shirt on that one. I brought this up on other shows, and not to steal the thunder from V and Algo. Yeah, I was in high school in 87, and I was in a town that had a lot of corporations located here. And man, my classmates may not have understood per se, but I was in a business class in high school, a very, very good business class in 87. And man, I mean, I remember my teacher was also a consultant to local corporations. So when that went down, she was almost like pleading with the class saying, please don't go drinking this weekend and get in trouble. Your parents need a breather right now. You know, and everybody in the room is like, what's the deal? Like the company's fine. It's like, yeah, well, your parents may not get laid off, but your parents' retirement money, which is essentially your money, just got absolutely hammered. So as we often say here on Rogue, we're not dispensing financial advice. I'm solely pointing out this is the pattern. And on a related note, Micah Dank has a ton of examples in his work of astrology and modern movies. Two of the examples he recently cited being the Harry Potter films and the movie Face Off with Nick Cage and John Travolta, where Cage's character was named Castor Pollux, which is a reference, folks, to two different astronomical points. And this is, again, a Silver Lake reference, where these alignments and these patterns and these behaviors, folks, it isn't just movies. It's the stock market as well. And I know this has been an area of interest for V and Algo. So again, you know, to take a page out of my management consulting days with people a lot smarter than me that I used to work with, one of the top 3 jingles we used to use when it came to advising them on a number of things was, whatever the point in time is, work backward from there. So it's like, if hypothetically it is October of 2026 with some close calls along the way, then you may want to plan that that's your point in time, that whatever readiness is for you. Now, equally, could it occur out of cycle? Sure. In fact, Algo and Via and I have been discussing that a lot this week, that, you know, I don't want to say mainstream, but this kind of awareness has grown to more than just, us here at Rogue or others like us. So, sitting in their darkened halls with Baphomet in the back, are the elites saying we better do it in March? I don't know. I'm just saying that's a pattern, and it's worth pointing out.
If I may, it's actually Castor Troy and Pollux Troy, and they were brothers, and that's also that's an astrological thing, and it's also a Greek god, Roman god thing.
Thank you, sir. It's been mentioned regarding market influence. It's been mentioned in a couple of alternative channels, including us. The investment system used by BlackRock is called Aladdin. Boy, they love their names.
You talking about the trading bot?
Yeah, Aladdin.
Yeah. Yep.
If you want to point to an AI system who actually does work because it has a necessary human element to keep it working, that's such a system. Importantly, even when large banks or private equity organizations have leveraged software for their investment planning, none of them really, at least from analysts, none of them really seem to approach how good Aladdin is. But there's something more important than that. Several sources have said Aladdin has reached such power, it has the means to no longer follow the market, but direct the market, or at least direct them up to a point. So when you consider the troika of BlackRock, State Street Advisors, and Vanguard collectively, who can leverage their wealth under a management system like Aladdin, it's easy to see why. Not dispensing investment advice, only stating the obvious. Perhaps tracking BlackRock investments could make you a few bucks. Moving on to main course items. So who's working for who? And beyond my normal weekly ramblings, you may want to turn up the volume on this particular segment. Some of you alternative watchers may have noticed a theme who's especially pronounced the last month or two, and that being a couple of realities. First, many longtime news readers at major networks are out of a job. The official narrative being these networks are now owned by someone friendlier to the current presidential administration. In my opinion, that's disinformation. Otherwise, those networks would start sounding like Fox News, and they don't sound like that. Second, it's WWE out there among various high-paid people in the thought space. As the amazing Polly calls them, the narrative network, made up of nothing but mercenaries of the media. My normal joke about people wearing hats, whether Tim Pool or various quote-unquote operators in the defense sector appearing both in dimly lit studios with hats, the kind of people whose military service is unknown beyond a few high points, and stating everything from white hats are going to save the day to China is reverse engineering UFO technology. And in the case of the latter, we know America's broke, folks, but we need another $5 trillion for the defense contractors as we're barely keeping up with China. Sidebar. Did any of you catch my post on Discord about new, and I use the word loosely, the new stealth autonomous submarines who've been fielded? Like that isn't a massive game changer. I wonder how many Taiwan has, as I'll bet they have a bunch no one knows about. The net being everyone out there in the well-paid, approved, keyword, approved alternative space is attacking everyone else. It's the alternative community equivalent of the movie Gangs of New York, in my opinion. Sides are shifting everywhere, and this is no joke. This is very serious and very real. What do I mean? Consider the international environment of the 1970s or the 1980s. Okay, we had some surprises in those years, but everybody played their part in those years internationally, whether governments, country borders, or corporations. Even at the end of the Cold War, including what happened in Bosnia and the Baltics in general, some other dust-ups occurred, but the rules, the known goals, were accepted and stable. But right now, from my seat observing the gambling table, the roulette wheel, and the chessboard have literally flown out the window. There's an old saying in financial circles about always chasing financial yield. Money motivation is about yields. In the realm of the contemporary media, this is everyone chasing relevancy as much as a new sponsor. To me, this is literally the equivalent to artists and theologians trying to find a feudal lord or lady to sponsor their work, otherwise they're going to starve. Someone please find me another Sistine Chapel to paint. These are the people the powerful want to inform the public, whether mainstream media or alternative. That universe right now is not just in disarray as the equivalent of a meteor just hit the earth. Here are some examples. Everyone everywhere seems to feel Tucker Carlson should no longer be on the air, and that's funny. Oh, sure, I've pointed out personally how deeply his roots to the CIA go, including his family. That doesn't mean he hasn't been leveraged to both cover and reveal some rather critical topics the last 2 years, not the least of which was the disclosures about JFK. Yeah, and Nick Fuentes is also on somebody's payroll. That doesn't mean Tucker interviewing him is one of the seals of revelation being broken open. I'm tempted to believe folks don't want Tucker on the air because of his content. They want him off the air because he's another mouth to feed. We have Bill Mayer become less inflammatory and more calm on a number of serious topics. George Stephanopoulos was confronted on his own show about what he did in Bill Clinton's administration. Everyone wants Steve Bannon out of the way. Rand Paul no longer sounds like a libertarian, and he does sound like somebody who's been bought. Marjorie Taylor Greene appears to be in free agency, and she doesn't seem to know whose side she's on. And even classic political think tanks like the Heritage Foundation are acting like someone caught their hand in the Levant's cookie jar. Russell Brand has been reinvented so many times as a liberal, as a conservative, as a guy being accused of hooking up with underage girls. I'm sure you can buy him on eBay pretty cheap. Jon Stewart is desperately
He's now a born-again Christian.
Let's
judgment to tell us.
Oh my God, let's go down that road.
He's born again, and I saw him with Jordan Peterson. They were in a stadium praying over the people.
He took the former OnlyFans route, like you go get saved, and the 9,000 guys that you did are gone now.
Who was it?
How
there was
dare you accuse him of homosexuality?
I was talking about a female, but okay.
Who was the woman, famous pop star or whatever? She went full blown Orthodox. Had her head covered in shirt.
That.
Yeah, I'll think of who it was, but when I saw her, I almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, God, next Lady Gaga's going to say, I was worshiping Satan. I'm sorry.
Katy Perry.
Jon Stewart is desperately trying to find the middle in his commentary, or at least one with a paycheck. And Jimmy Kimmel's wife reinforces the idea that cutting off your relatives because of who they voted for isn't reactionary. It's what's necessary against people who are as bad as Hitler. Never mind, her husband got his start on a program called The Man Show with girls in bikinis on trampolines.
Yep, I remember that show. It was a
good show.
Ziggy Zaggy.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll describe that period in his career as youthful indiscretion. Overall, this might be explained away as aftershocks from the changing role of the Levant politically and socially in the U.S. The topic of the Levant certainly has come up a lot the last 2 months, whether pro or critical of that country's policies and influence in the U.S. But from my vantage point, it's far bigger. If we've got this much turmoil in approved and alternative talking heads, it means sides are shifting. And let's be candid, money is running out in a number of venues, and people who thought they were on the inside track are realizing they might actually be expendable. Car accident, boat sinking, zip myself up in my own luggage in a London apartment kind of expendable, for those of you who recall the latter example. Yes, let me say that again. You can't be a media insider, whether mainstream media or alternative, and on the payroll of powerful people, and just have your career come to an end. You don't get to go into real estate after being allowed to speak to tens of thousands, if not millions of people with approved messages. You know too much. There
Unless
are some less
6 foot under real estate.
Oh, yes, under the Silver Lake. There are some less sensational considerations who, in fairness, must be raised too. Media monopolies like those of the 1970s through the early 2000s have essentially collapsed. Audiences have become highly fragmented and the profit model's broken. Ironically, after I wrote this segment, George Webb suddenly weighed in on the same topic on Wednesday. His input dovetails nicely, including a few data points, one of which was when Candace Owens left the Daily Wire, she went out and started her own thing. He believes it articulates the prior points about there's less room in the boat at major outfits and it's everyone for themselves. Equally, you might be better off if you go and do it yourself. Though let's be honest, there's no way anyone does that without some kind of wealthy shadow backers hiding in the corner somewhere. His source is not just his own work, but an article from the British publication The Guardian, who said within a year, social media creators will overtake traditional media advertisement revenue. That's rather important. Advertising revenue. What also occurs in such an environment? Loss of control. Yeah. Because when you have independent media providers who are not part of the machine, my God, anyone could say anything out there without being controlled. Please envision pearl clutching at the FBI, CIA, London Corporation, and everyone else. Another shocking takeaway is why this is happening. Loosely said, trust now follows providers, not networks. That's huge. If you have any doubt of what I just said, consider the fact that CNN basically is bankrupt. We know how the world works. If that makes money, you and your agenda, big media can burn. This, by the way, is another possible reason why traditional media has tried to lure people back with actual information and real things. The question is, how long can they get away with that before they go back to message? This is a good time to quote Kevin Spacey from Margin Call. Quote, "This is what the beginning of a fire sale looks like," unquote. Artificial intelligence. Bear with me just a second. I'm channeling you, V. I've got folks with power drills working in the house.
That's like that in deliveries.
Artificial intelligence. Whenever anyone discusses the topic of our artificial intelligence, folks, please remember how complex and vast that topic is. There are AI core engines used in the software tools, the various tools themselves, efforts to develop new software tools specific to market needs, the infrastructure that supports the software, the power grid, and these are just a few points of the bigger picture. So my comments today are just a sliver. So why all the fuss about AI when it's not ready for prime time? Is that simply because the elites hoped it would work and provide a mechanism to breathe life into the global economy again? Are corporations and governments investing heavily in the early stages of this technology simply to drive improvements to global power grids, who, as I mentioned earlier, have been needing attention for some time? Again, I believe there's some truth to that, but something bigger is going on. As I pour through many studies and reports of projections about AI, including power grid growth, there's a puzzling piece to that picture. That being, those estimates are based on what exactly other than wild projections? I can accept that because for this kind of spend and build out, immense resources are involved. I cannot accept that. When they leverage resources at this level, quite frankly, most of the world's elites could care less what the public thinks. So why the business and national infrastructure narrative? I found some clarity in a strange place. A close friend of mine sent me a British military article discussing how artificial intelligence technology is being leveraged with great success to find submarines. Note what I said earlier about stealth submarines with no crew aboard. I know some of you might say, okay, well, what's the big deal? Well, it's a very big deal. Just ask the Chinese or anyone studying those massive torpedo or those passive torpedo technologies developed the last 20 years. The ability of those systems to rely on their stealth is a key reason why submarine technology and warfare is taken so seriously. We've leapt beyond naval officers listening with headphones or using software to detect the sound of a propeller. We've now moved into a world where AI software can extrapolate where a submarine may be given water depth and what are known as thermals in different layers of water, your enemy's submarine technology capabilities, and a host of other considerations beyond just sound. This now also includes changes in magnetic fields caused by the movement of objects underwater. Predictive algorithms via AI are constantly being tuned and retuned. Now consider what if your target is not a submarine? What if your target is people? The responses and reactions to people in an ocean, not of water, but of data. What's the biggest thing you need to monitor people while utilizing AI? You need immense storage, data storage, and very fast systems to run through all that data. For those of you for whom technology is not your thing, think of it this way, and it's my analogy from earlier. You can always replace the engine in a car or truck as long as the vehicle and its infrastructure are suitable, so that every time a new engine is developed, you can just drop in the new motor. You need to build the power grid, the data centers, and the infrastructure. Even if the software and the AI tools are not ready yet, they will be eventually. I know some who will believe this is about control, and there is an element of that to be sure. However, they've always had forms of control previously, so what's different? The difference is the potential in the economy as well as society for both influence and monitoring who previously did not exist. The Silicon Valley types will love this as they're always interested in unique market segments they can target. In fact, Stanford University in California teaches classes on the use of technology for things like this. And ironically, those classes were heavily influenced by people from the intelligence community, but that's another topic. Another related item was revealed recently. For those of you in Canada or the United States, you will have occasional data gathering pop-ups asking you whether or not you want to permit them to gather data. But from my experiences recently in Europe, it's a very different experience if you're accessing the internet in Europe, as far as the sheer depth of questions they ask you before they grant you access about what they may or may not monitor. It's a very long list of questions. Some of you in the audience might say, well, I've seen that in the United States or Canada. Yes, you have, but unless you've accessed a network in Europe, you have no idea how the difference there is between how many things they admit they're monitoring. All I could think of was how granular that data tracking is globally, none of which will matter as this new tech improves. It does reveal, though, the depth of granularity of the data they're seeking. The best use of that data is not to control necessarily, but to sell goods and socially manipulate. At the same time, we must never forget there are opportunities. We have to remember when the internet went mainstream, people thought that too would be a weapon. It was, but it was also an opportunity. If you consider just a few of the high-level things John Singleton has been saying in his use for AI, Pandora's box goes both ways. One other item is Saudi Arabia's Aramco Corporation. The CEO stated Saudi Arabia will be a major AI center because of the advantages of their cheap energy. They're not the only ones who want in on that raw data. Just a second. Come on. There we go. Job losses and recent events. For more than a month, we've had intertwining stories about job losses and social benefits being cut at the same time. On October 29th, Gus Demos said on his program, or pointed out, commentary about EBT benefits and what those were being used to purchase. For those who missed the program, no joke, you could use EBT benefits to purchase edible underwear online. Have EBT and SNAP benefit systems been in place for a long time? Yes. Was there any investigation of it to expose the existing fraud the last 20 years? No. My point is, this is another area of fraud where huge amounts of tax money are authorized to be spent in ways you had no idea occurred until it was convenient to tell you, or in current time exposed the part of shutting off lines of funding between apex elites who are battling it out inside the United States. Ironically, who relates to blowing up drug boats as well. On a related note, how does one help pay for standing armies on U.S. soil? The benefits are a great way to do it beyond NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and similar funding sources. Also, for the obvious question in many people's minds, why not just shut them down? Because such a move would cause a response by the various sides involved. Therefore, you can only do such a thing if you're ready in advance. In my opinion, plans for this conflict were being laid out well before the powers that be put the Donald back in office. These standing armies on our soil are not Arab or from Mexico or from Haiti. They're your own citizens being paid to be a standing army. When you look at Iran in the 1950s, Chile in 73, and on, how can popular movements in various countries be so well organized when those countries have domestic intelligence services whose job it is to prevent such a thing? It's no different in the United States right now. There's just a mental block in our minds that such people exist on our soil, which they do. Watch the movie Arlington Road with Jeff Bridges, Joan Cusack, and Tim Robbins, because, folks, that's exactly what's going on.
Good movie.
A very good movie. There's a lot of psychology behind how these networks are maintained as well. Here's a fascinating question. If they're getting paid to wait until needed, then they're still getting paid. If they're getting paid to march in the streets in 2020 or post George Floyd or show up on college campuses in 2024, then they're getting paid. What happens when they're not getting paid? When they do not receive their benefits or money from their funding sources and it impacts large numbers of them. While watching the movie American Gangster on the flight back to the United States, there's a great line in there by Russell Crowe, who's the detective. His character makes a statement about what happens in certain ethnic or racial communities when their organized crime groups cannot keep them employed anymore. Loosely said, it's the way the system works. And those people must be out there dealing drugs or managing prostitution or shaking people down for money, because otherwise they have no income. That creates two problems. First, their tribal leaders, read that as organized crime, or politicians, are now impotent because they can no longer provide for them. That's a problem. The other is now they need public assistance, and the government doesn't want to hear that either. The social analyst Noam Chomsky once said something to the effect, if you analyze the cost of incarceration versus having people out on the streets, it's cheaper to keep them in jail. What he described as the superfluous value of African American men in Los Angeles. It's not theory, it's reality. Keeping people in prison and dying of drug overdoses is cheaper than keeping them in society. That was angry rhetoric by LA African American leaders in the 1990s. That is proven London Corporation Tavistock Institute programs as of today. When I was working for a very large corporation in the early 2000s, we laid off 30,000 people in the Northeast in one day. We had actuarial tables who indicated 6 to 8% of those people we were about to lay off would attempt suicide or cause increases in domestic violence. One more data point to illuminate is this. The scene in the movie The Big Short with Brad Pitt, when he's in the casino with the two other characters. The two young guys with an angle are high-fiving each other over their planned approach to shorting mortgage bonds. Pitt's character becomes angry and tells them to cut it out. He makes a prophetic statement that every time unemployment in the United States goes up 1%, around 40,000 people die. He doesn't explain why they die, but you can understand why that's happening. So where am I going with this? It's not just about large layoffs or the recent government cutbacks eliminating EBT or similar subsidies. As Gus pointed out last week, the fraud in those systems is Old Testament biblical. Yes, many innocent people need those benefits to get by, but unfortunately those systems were established day one to enable fraud more than help people. We therefore have a perfect storm of layoffs, in and of themselves, plus a reduction in benefits, plus a massive cut to funding sources for activist groups, paid crisis actors, and the companies who promote them, and the list goes on. That, my friends, is a toxic brew of both people who legitimately need social aid to get by, as well as an unemployed, trained army of people who are not getting paid or paid as much as they were. Recall on prior programs my comments about why the main Colosseum in Rome, which was built after the Carthaginian Wars, was built. Thousands of unemployed killers were returning to Rome without work. Why do you think Rome always had all those large public works projects? In recent times, following another foray into the Middle East, the U.S. had thousands of returning soldiers with no jobs. Where did we send them? We sent them to North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Texas to work in oil fields. Officially, it was to put America back to work by drilling our own oil, improving our gross domestic product with domestic oil production and similar. The reality was a bit more complicated. Will we have other large corporations who serve their private equity masters keep launching large-scale layoffs? Honestly, I'm not sure, but the potential's certainly there. In this conflict of shaking off London's influence in the U.S., will the people directing the administration keep hammering the sources of money for that standing army? Well, with certainty. This battle is so important to have no illusions. Everyone in the administration, and I mean everyone, is expendable. It's my frequent narrative about why powerful people always are in the shadows with others in the public domain to absorb the risks. We'll see the National Guard continue to be leveraged in hotspots across the U.S., possibly. In my opinion, potentially, as the prior use has already affected the game board. Why are they needed? Because London and others will either try to leverage their remaining assets to create strife in the U.S., or they will stand down. At the same time, because it's occurred before, London and others may allow leaders of some of these domestic assets to be eliminated. They can always build another army, but the ones they've been using are increasingly becoming a liability. Stay tuned as we monitor the situation. So now on to my last segment, folks, which is basically just kind of a potpourri of some job hunting advice, and I've got some sites and tools for you here, and we'll put some stuff up on the screen. So this is a little bit like John Singleton's content, and also be the first of probably two segments on this I'll do. And noting my content earlier today, I know a number of you have been affected or concerned about being affected or know someone affected by recent staff restructuring at a number of organizations. And As many of you know, I've weathered a number of these myself across many industries the last 25 years, and I can definitely relate to how you or your family feel. Logic rarely accompanies these moments in the economy, and don't be hard on yourselves because it's not you, it's just the system. My goal with this segment is to give you some guidance and ideas to add to your tools. And many of you may already have a number of the resources I'm going to point out, which is fine. Hopefully I can provide you some new things. The first item is the font you use in resumes and cover letters is important because the software utilized by organizations. These types of software systems are what are known as ATS, or applicant tracking systems. Bear with me. Regardless of how certain job submission websites appear, the back end is usually the same 3 or 4 ATS systems that are used in industry, and many of those systems are very temperamental. When I say that, what I mean is if your resume contains graphics, artistry, or even bullet points, the resume can be rejected. You won't know it's been rejected when you submit it, but it is discarded. Therefore, you may want 2 versions of your resume, one who's higher quality and fancy, if you will, that you just hand to folks, and then the one that you use when you submit online. You want to leverage these types of fonts in your documentation for job submissions. And that's Arial, Calibri, Helvetica, Georgia, Times New Roman, Verdana, or Garamond. And frankly, my go-to on almost any occasion is Arial. The text in the document should be between 10 to 12 point, and your name or key terms in the 14 to 16 point size. If you insist on using bullet points, use the traditional black dot and avoid symbols. Bear with me. Oh, and avoid text boxes, tables, or graphics, as those can be in the fancier copy of your resume you would physically hand to somebody. Always send your resumes and cover letters in PDFs when possible. Another consideration is watching YouTube videos to improve how you appear during Zoom interviews, as those are quite common these days. Next up is LinkedIn, who I've leveraged for more than 20 years. Again, there are very good videos on how to improve your presence on LinkedIn. For instance, do you have a resume embedded in your profile that recruiters can scan? In my case, I have a resume and a professional overview in PowerPoint, both saved in PDF. Depending on the industry, I know folks who include samples of their work as well on their LinkedIn profile. There's an option there in your settings that will allow you to embed things in your LinkedIn profile. Also, does your profile include not just degrees or certifications? Does it include any recent online courses you may have taken or similar? Even charity involvement is good to post, as it's indicative of your character. Lastly, this is where leveraging more than one AI tool can be helpful in updating your content on LinkedIn. Case in point, with a tool like Claude, you can provide the tool with your URL to your LinkedIn page and ask it to provide you suggestions or improvements. You can do this with other AI tools. And regarding specifics with training, you can self-train with courses who are less than an hour or a few hours and instantly beef up your credentials. Depending on what you trained in, you may be asking how to gain real-world experience once you've passed it. Other than projects or work of your own, this is where you can give back. Check out various charities, churches, doesn't have to be your own, local government offices or similar, where you can volunteer. Now, options for online courses. These include companies known as Coursera, edX, ED and capital X, Udacity, and FutureLearn. And yes, I'm going to post these to Discord after today's show. Skill-based learning is outfits like Udemy, Skillshare, the LinkedIn Learning tool, and Pluralsight. I've taken several LinkedIn Learning courses the last year, and they are quite good. Business and professional resources include what's known as Master Class, Coursera for business, and corporate training programs like Go1, letter G-O and the number 1. For any of you project managers or other folks who are licensed in your industries, many of those organizations now offer ongoing education courses. Case in point, for project managers like me, our organization, which is PMI, or the Project Management Institute, no longer just has course providers or their own courses to earn an entire certification. They now offer specific quick training courses, and of late, quite a few in artificial intelligence. Now, Algo, if you'll pull up the Career Research Library, this is a library resource, folks, and the website is all one word, the free site -whitepapers.tradepub.com. This is exactly what it looks like. It's a mountain of information of various resources you can read and improve what you know about your own industry or another industry. And then specific job site websites I recommend. Always remember with any of these that I'm about to list for you, you can set up an automated reminder that's daily or weekly that will be against the profile that you want, or as I've done in the past, I set up 2 or 3 based on whatever criteria that I want. The other thing too is when it comes to working virtually without your needing to move out of another state, the first one, and Algo, if you can pull that up, is Virtual Vocations, www.virtualvocations.com. And then there's another one called Flex Jobs, www.flexjobs.com. Both of these are exactly what they look like. Either jobs that you perform online or similar arrangements like 1099s and similar, which is an option. It's a good option. I've known a number of people that, especially depending on the industry they're in or where they are as far as their time in life, it's like, you know what, I don't mind working online and just, being on Zoom calls all day with people rather than needing to drive to the office. Some traditional sites include Glassdoor. I've used Glassdoor for years. That's www.glassdoor.com. One of the good things about Glassdoor is they provide testimonials from people who work for any of the companies that you may look up. They also have, for those of you who remember the old Hoover's website, you can look up jobs, you can look up companies in a particular sector. So that's kind of cool. And then you can see what people say about working there, both good and bad. And equally, they have a rating system of how healthy that firm may be in their industry. One of the warnings I've told folks for years, unfortunately, is sometimes when you've got a firm that's hiring, it's because they just lost a bunch of people. Another site is dice.com, www.dice.com. I know for years this one has been seen as predominantly an information technology website. And I know it's kind of says that on their website. They do have more than that. They've got project roles in there. It's not just for people who write code or whatever. It's worth taking a look at. They've got roles that are outside IT. And then LinkedIn, of course. The thing about LinkedIn, and speaking to what I said at the opening of the program about Knight's comment about software, loosely said, basically the engine on the back end of LinkedIn that's used for people's credentials and similar. A lot of companies have the ability to scan that. And it's favored by a lot of firms because compared to others they might use, LinkedIn's not as expensive. And obviously it's their bread and butter. So it's in LinkedIn's best interest to keep that thing running the way it should. And it has an immense amount of tools and an ability to, it also is another one where you can type into your search words like virtual or remote and then the job title, and it will pull those up. And then last but not least, AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude. Go ahead and ask those tools, who are the executive recruiters or placement firms in your particular interest or area of interest or your industry. Those also can be very helpful. So with that, I'll yield the floor, and Algo and V, thoughts?
No, excellent program as always, Cowboy.
You know what? LinkedIn is tricky if you're somebody who has an addiction to social media. Don't use the social media on LinkedIn. It's most likely designed as any other social media, which is made to get you to participate, which is generally done by finding things to piss you off. I know a guy who just has that problem, and he couldn't help it say things on there that essentially got him blacklisted from being hired at all kinds of places. So LinkedIn don't use it for social media. Got a couple items here.
Before you move to your other item, let me qualify what Algo is saying. There are folks who get on LinkedIn and they make postings about companies or industries or these guys suck or whatever. That you want to avoid.
Yep.
But what you want to do to raise your profile and its importance to recruiters is you want to post industry articles, or say things like another new development in micronuclear reactors, and then after you post some text, then the URL, hit your return key, and then use a hashtag and add things like nuclear, next one, hashtag Midwest or whatever, as the list goes on. Those types of things will help your profile. But yeah, don't weigh into social commentary. That's bad juju.
Yeah, and people do it. People can't help. I see it. They can't help themselves. But good addition on that, Veles. I didn't even know that. I didn't realize you could. Logically you should know you could help yourself. One thing about going back to the beginning is large sums of money going towards AI. And V talks about this quite often. There's just no more yield left, like in the financial markets.
We've yielded out.
Yeah. Yielded out. And so, the yield has hit the yield sign. So the reality is that a lot of these bankers, excuse me, whatever, asset managers, you name it, bankers, shadow bankers, they make money on fee income. So anytime you can make a large transaction happen, anytime you can place yourself as a gatekeeper for the flow of money, you can always take a piece. So understand that as far as, hey, we need to put $5 trillion towards AI. Well, it might be that I just want a piece of that $5 trillion. The other end of it is that and I know this is going to sound conspiratorial, but this really is how markets work. And V, I don't know, you can call me crazy for saying this or back me up if you agree with it. But if you have what's going on with AI right now, we're hearing all this news about the bubble popping. Everybody's scared. Now you're going to hear, oh, we need $5 trillion to fund it. Trillion with a T, people. What is everybody going to do? They're going to sell. Right? Mm-hmm. But what if you don't really need $5 trillion to fund it? What if the AI bubble popping is like going to happen eventually, or it's already happened, but it isn't as big of a problem? It's not manageable by just printing money. Everybody's going to sell. Larry Ellison's going to take that $400 billion that he just spun up for doing nothing. And when everybody's done panicking, they're going to start printing money right after he buys the bottom. Just understand that those kind of things do happen in finance. They did figure out a way to punish the baseball players and the other sports teams, specifically baseball, for rigging the games. And what they do is they just bring back Tommy Lasorda to come eat them. As far as the main course, I'm like, wait a minute, main course? I mean, at the risk of kissing ass here, I thought we were in the main course of Vela's items when he goes, and now for the main course. It's kind of like, damn, dude. It's just the
Well, I always start with appetizers.
Well, the appetizers,
it's a big meal. It's a big meal.
The appetizers were like going to a top-rate restaurant for the main course. CNN being bankrupt, you mentioned that. I believe Larry Ellison just bought. He bought Paramount, which he bought also TikTok and CNN, and that's all. Larry Ellison now owns 1/6 of the media. And there's a whole story behind that we don't need to get into. But this was something that we've talked about before, Veles, when you talked about the data centers and the need to target people. Yeah. If you guys go back to, I think this show's like 10 years old now, and it was the Punisher series on Netflix, and Amazing. It was really good. It was with
season 1, masterpiece.
What's that?
Season 1 was a masterpiece. Season 2 was just fucking annoying. But
that's all right. Yeah, you know how it is. You got to finish the show, or you don't. But John Blumenthal is the actor.
It's John Berthnall, not Blumenthal, bro.
Whatever.
John Berthnall.
John Berthnall.
One of the best actors.
Berthnall. So he basically, at one point, they can't find him. Like he is. That's an interesting character, by the way. We got to get into him a little bit. Educated over in Russia. He's an interesting character. Let's leave it at that. Yeah, he's based as hell. He's a good guy. As far as I can tell, I don't know him. But at one point, they're trying to find him. And because like he's hiding, whatever. Like the authorities need to find him. And this is like 10 years ago, maybe more. And at one point, the underling or whatever, the city cop, the guy who's trying to find him, has to consult the intelligence services, somebody in, at agency. And they actually say, I need the apparatus. And they come back and they say, do you have any idea how much power it takes to power the apparatuses? We need to find them. So what they're saying there is that they have an apparatus that's powered by all kinds of software and data centers, and it's so powerful that they need to like divert power from cities just to use the technology to find somebody based on gait recognition, facial recognition, things like that. So we're learning about this stuff now, but it's probably been around a while. But it just kind of speaks to what the data centers are probably really about. I mean, come on, guys. One of the biggest data centers is like the NSA data center out in Utah. What does the NSA do?
Surveillance, man. Oh, yeah. It's like what the Chinese said back in 2010 when they looked at this whole AI thing coming out. They looked at it and they're like, the Western side was marketing. It's going to be some wonderful revolution. No. And they looked at it and they're like, this is just for surveillance. That's it.
We were just talking about that like yesterday, I think.
Yeah. And now we know with the New York Times article where 20,000 chat logs from the New York Times from ChatGPT was handed over in a court case. I mean, it's like stupid stuff, bro.
Yeah. No, it's just another bit here because I know we got to respect everybody's time. Veles was talking about drug dealing in LA, keeping guys at work. Crack epidemic in the 90s. You got Freeway Rick Ross. You got all that whole thing, right? There are two famous people who have a few things in common: Tupac Shakur and Nipsey Hussle. And both of them were telling the truth about this kind of thing. And both of them are no longer with us. And they did not die of old age. Just keep that in mind. What else we got? Oh, that's it. That's all I had. So, Veles, as always, just freaking awesome show. Thank you.
Thank you, boys. And I hope to be back on the air, V, before you joined us. I'm out next week. I'm on the coast.
Gotcha.
So, and then the week after that, folks, is like Thanksgiving. So we'll see. You never know. I may join V and Algo on a Troika show of just the three of us bantering as we often do, or I may see you all again in early December. But my thanks as always for the time of all you who listen. My thanks as always for Algo and the AWACS, and my thanks as always for V for the support.
Absolutely. Fellas, thank you so much for joining us, folks. Thank you so much for listening in. Enjoy your weekends. And Cowboy, thank you for working the airways, man.
Hey, my pleasure.
That being said, take it away, brother.